Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm pleased to welcome you to this fourth webinar of the 2024 edition of the Data Collection Webinar Series, which is organized by the Data Collection Unit at UNICEF headquarters. I'm Attila Hancıoğlu. I'm the Chief of the Data Collection Unit and also the Global Coordinator of the MICS program in UNICEF headquarters. This year, we are focusing on the Multiple Indicator Cluster Surveys program. We are delving into different aspects of MICS implementation at country level, exploring new modules, tools, features, data quality, everything about MICS. We are holding these webinars every 2 weeks on Wednesdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today's webinar is entitled MICS GIS, Harnessing the Power of Geolocation Data. Before I hand over to our presenters, some housekeeping rules. We have scheduled, as usual, about 1 hour and 30 minutes for today's webinar, including the Q&A. Throughout the webinar, please remain muted. Write your questions in the Q&A box, which will be made available towards the end of the presentation. We will try and group your questions and direct them to the presenters during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. We're recording this webinar and will be available on the MICS YouTube channel together with the past webinars. The recording is also available, will also be available on the UNICEF SharePoint site, and you can find the links to both of these in the announcement that you received earlier. As I mentioned, today's webinar is on MICS GIS, Harnessing the Power of Geolocation Data, and presenting, we have two MICS team members, Bo and Nazim. Bo Robert Beshanski-Pedersen is our household survey expert, and Nazim Gashi is one of our GIS expert consultants. And with this, I would like to hand over to Bo. I think Bo is starting first. Bo, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Attila, and thank you for the opportunity to present this in the webinar series. There are many interesting subjects that we go through in this round, and this is just one of many. But we have seen an enormous interest in this, so I'm happy with the amount of people watching and the people who will be watching later on YouTube. You can go to the next slide, Nazim, please. I know you are controlling today. I will not disturb the call very much because the presentation is very much Nazim's. We will be walking you through a small introduction, and which includes a little history lesson as well. We will talk about the current or the focus of what we call the MICS GIS projects, which includes survey boundaries, the displacement of cluster locations, and the geospatial covariates that are added to the data following the displacement and the availability of the data. Finally, we will look at some use cases that are perhaps the most interesting bit for all of you. But let's get started. Nazim, next slide, please. So the history lesson is that GPS data collection has actually been part of MICS standard tools since MICS 3 in 2005, which is when I started my career in MICS. It's a long time ago, and the very first survey I was involved in was in Ghana, and GPS data was collected. But the MICS program did not have a mechanism or the internal capacity to really develop protocols and support countries in the data. So country survey teams, and rightfully so, were sitting with their own data. Lots of countries didn't incorporate because it was quite costly at the time. It's still not the cheapest if you are to collect data. On the other hand, countries that did include the module did collect GPS cluster locations and added it to the data. The advice from our end obviously was to not share the original coordinates, right, for the purpose of protecting respondents, and that left the data sort of in a vacuum somehow. And we have had on our wish list for as many years as I can remember the idea to make a big push on GIS, and with much delay, I should say, for lack of human and financial capacity, we started the process a couple of years ago. We took advantage of some internal capacity within UNICEF that sort of kickstarted the project on what we could do and how to do it. So since 2021, through some pilot work with a couple of very helpful country engagements, we have been making geospatial data accessible for download on the MICS website in collaboration with the statistical officers that own the data. All of this is done, as I mentioned, with a view of, well, yes, making the data available, but even more so to ensure that respondents are protected. We come from very rapidly increasing demands of geospatial data, and through the helpfulness and the willingness of various parties that have been sitting on the original data, we have many occasions of the original data being shared, which we cannot really allow to happen without very strict controls. To have floating true locations of your survey respondents is really risky in terms of respondent protection. So that's more or less where we are, and I'm sort of leaving the ball to Nazim to kind of walk you through with what we have gone through and achieved over the past more or less 2 years, and to end up where we are going. It's a good story, and we are quite proud with how things are progressing, so you can look forward to something nice. And with that, I'm going to hand over to you, Nazim. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Hi, everyone. So now we will continue with some of the projects that we are doing in MICS GIS. And the first one is about the anonymisation process of cluster geocodes. Then we have the survey boundaries and the geospatial covariates. Let me start with the survey boundaries as one of the starting point projects within MICS GIS. We want to make, and we are actually making, survey boundaries shapefiles available for the MICS surveys. We are just making the shapefiles available for the sample certification of the survey, and including one more administrative level below the shapefile for this level too. And now I will show here the example of Madagascar MICS 6. And if you go to the final report of this survey, you see that the sample was designed to provide estimates at the national level for urban and rural areas and for 22 regions, meaning that for this specific survey, we have 3 survey boundaries shapefile. The first one is at the national level, as it is indicating the information to the final report. This is the case to the most surveys, but that is not the case all the time. And then is for the very first subnational level, which is called regions in Madagascar. And this is a sample certification of 22 regions in this survey. Then, as I said earlier, we are including one administrative level below as a shapefile, and this shapefile is going to be used only for the displacement purpose of cluster coordinates. I will go to this shapefile later in a bit, just 2 more minutes. So we have 3 shapefiles, as I said. The first one is called MICS boundaries, and this is for us is the highest level of representation in the survey. In this case, for Madagascar, is at the national level. And then for MICS boundaries 2, this is the shapefile, which is the second level of representation in the survey. And then we have the mixed boundaries NR, as we called it, NR meaning non-representative in the survey. And this shapefile is used only for the displacement purpose of cluster coordinates. Then here we have the anonymized cluster geocodes. But I wanted to first to make it clear, why do we anonymize the cluster geocodes? And Bo said something earlier about sharing the original locations of classes, and we want to tell why that doing that is not good, and why do we anonymize the data. And I prepared an example here. Why do we displace it? So here you can see one enumeration area which has been sampled from MICS. This is just a mock-up example, just for the purpose of this webinar. With the brown dots here, you can see all the households that we interviewed. Supposedly, we interviewed in a survey. And then let's say that we decide, okay, let's make available the cluster-centered location of this enumeration area and make it available for users to use it in the future. But doing that is wrong. And why is that so? Because it puts the respondent it puts a higher identification rate for the respondent that we have interviewed. Let's say that we are in one of the households that we interviewed in this particular cluster, and we have in the woman questionnaire, we have these two questions. For example, how many sons are living with you? And how many daughters are living with you? And let's say the answer is 1 son and 8 daughters. And everyone, if you share the original location of this cluster, everyone will know that in this village, there's only one household that has 8 daughters and 1 son. And in this way, you are making identifiable the household that participated in MICS and answered the questionnaires. Then another example, in the household questionnaire, we have a question like this. When you ask the households, how many livestock do you have? And let's say that the answer was like this. So for all the livestock, the answer was 0, but for these two, we have, they said that we have 89 goats and 85 sheep. So in this village, again, everyone knows that there is only one farm, and that farm is at this household. In this way, you are making, again, this household and very easily identifiable. And that's why we use a methodology of displacing the cluster coordinates. In this way, you anonymize the data, and you will there is a very low chance for someone to find the relocation of the cluster where it was interviewed. The methodology that we use is a methodology that has been a near identical methodology with a global gold standard developed and implemented by the DHS program. And this methodology includes taking the centroid of the cluster and displacing that centroid to a random angle and at a random distance with some parameters that we have. The angle of displacement can be any from 0 to 360 degrees, while for the displacement distance, we have some parameters depending in the area type of the cluster. If the cluster is an urban one, then the displacement distance of the cluster can go up to 2 kilometers. While if the cluster is a rural one, then the displacement distance can go up to 5 kilometers. And only 1% randomly selected of the rural clusters is going to be displaced in a distance of up to 10 kilometers. For this, displacement work is covered in one of our tools in MICS GIS tools, which is called a MICS Geocode plugin, and it works in an open source GIS software in QGIS. This plugin helps us in displacing the cluster coordinates and extracting the geospatial covariates. For the geospatial covariates, I will talk later. And this tool can be downloaded in our website and in the link below here. And for this tool, we have been conducted with the National Statistics Office and with the UNICEF country offices. We have been conducting capacity building training on how to use this tool and possibly use it in other household surveys within the countries. At this stage, in collaboration with the Statistics Office, we have managed to release the GIS datasets for 13 surveys. The surveys that you see here listed in the list on the right side of the slide. But what I can say is that we have many more in the pipeline, and including all the MICS 7 surveys. As of last year, when we launched it in MICS 7, the seventh round of MICS, we agreed on integrating GIS into all the MICS tools, but in the same time, we are moving backwards in making GIS datasets available for the surveys that were conducted in the past. Mainly concentrated in the last few years, but it can be like this survey from Kosovo, which is from 2013 and 14. So we are working in different surveys on making the GIS datasets available. Then the next project is about the geospatial covariates. For the first two projects that I already explained about the survey boundaries and the GIS datasets, with these two projects, we have already been publishing data. But for this one, geospatial covariates, we are in the final stage, but not yet sharing anything. And we hope that very soon we will be able to launch this project. What it is, the geospatial covariates, is a group of datasets that is linking the mixed survey cluster locations with external data coming from open sources from different topics, like population, climate, environment, and other topics. In this way, we are trying to make some datasets available for researchers without GIS expertise to be able to conduct geospatial analysis. How it works, as I said, from open sources, we take different data, different estimation, grid raster files, and vector data, and we put all of this in a one package, in one standard datasets package, and we merge them with the cluster locations by just putting our cluster location overlapping with the raster files in this case. And in this way, we link the data and we extract the values for each specific cluster, for each different variable of the geospatial covariates. I will show to you some examples, but here you see three different rasters as an example. Let's say that the first one is like for each pixel that you see here is showing a value of the estimated number of inhabitants of people living within 1 square kilometer. Then the second one, let's say, is a raster file, again 1 square kilometer, showing the number of under 5 children living in that particular area. And the last one, let's say, is, I don't know, is precipitation, the average precipitation per year, temperature, daytime, land surface temperature, or something of all the topics that we are including to the geospatial covariates. And then in the end, you will have the results for each cluster showing the estimated average for that particular cluster for that covariate that we are extracting the results. Here I'm showing just very few variables that we are planning to release within the geospatial covariates. These data are coming from open sources, and for all of them, we will share the source of the data, and these data sets will have more than 100 different variables from different sources. And just remember, one of them, it will be the degree of urbanization. For this one, I will talk later. Now I have prepared two examples to show to you how the geospatial covariates data will work and what you will have in the end. What it is important to know is that the geospatial covariates datasets will be available only for the displaced cluster coordinates, because nothing will be shared from the original data of the cluster locations, but only from the displaced cluster locations. And sometimes if you talk, for example, for the climate covariates that we are planning to calculate, this will not make a lot of difference if you use the original location of the cluster or the displaced one. because I said the highest distance of displacement can go up to 10 kilometers. And the temperature, it doesn't change a lot within 10 kilometers, or the precipitation rate doesn't change a lot in 10 kilometers distance. But when you talk for some specific variables like the population count or under 5 children population, this may affect the results when you use the displaced coordinates rather than using the original coordinates. Here's the example for one of the learning tables that we have in MICS, which is LN 2.3 for primary schools attendance and out-of-school children, disaggregated by the proximity to the primary schools. Here you see some MICS clusters with the brown dots. Then with the small pink squares, you have the primary schools. This is just a mock-up example. And then by using our MICS GIS MICS geocode plugin tool, you can very easily calculate the distance to the nearest primary school in this case, and you will have the results in a table. For each cluster, you will have the distance in meters from the nearest primary school. And we took these results and we put it to a table for one of the pilot surveys that we had for MICS GIS, which is LAO PDR MICS 2017. And we took this table for primary school attendance, and we disaggregated the results by the distance. And we did the disaggregation by calculating the distance to the nearest school from the displaced cluster centroids and using the original locations of the cluster. We did both of the disaggregations just to better show in an example how the displacement affects the results. You see, let's go with the down one, which is for the using original locations of the clusters. And within the first 100 meters from the cluster centroids to the nearest primary school, we have 2,400 children. In total, we have less than 12,000 children from the whole survey. And only within the first 100 meters, you have more than 2,000 children. And if you compare it by calculating the distance from the displaced centroids to the nearest school, primary school, you have only 178 children. And comparing with 2,400, this is a big discrepancy. And then if we go to the next one, which is for the distance between 100 meters to 500 meters, we have more than 4,600 children using the original coordinates. When you see the same from the displaced one, you have less than 2,000. And this is when you need to be careful. But we put here five classes. However, if you put only, for example, 2 classes or 3 classes with higher distance between this disaggregations, then the results will not look too bad, if I can put it under quotes. But for example, here you see that all the children within the first kilometer distance from the primary school, the rate of attending the primary schools is higher than 90%. And if you go away for more than 1 kilometer, you have a drop of 6-7% of less children going to school. This is very clear by using the original coordinates, but it's not the same when you use the displaced centroids. For at least for the children being within 1 to 2 kilometers distance. But when you go out of more than 2 kilometers, this is again similar with the results that we got from the original centroids. This is the first example. Then the next one is by going to the table TM41, which is about the antenatal care coverage disaggregated by the motorized travel time to healthcare. So we went to a Malaria Atlas project, and they had some estimations about the whole globe in different topics. And for the purpose of this webinar, we took this one about the motorized travel time to healthcare. They have estimations about the time in minutes that you need to travel from your location to the nearest healthcare facility around the globe. This is available at the resolution of 1 by 1 kilometer pixel. So then we took our mixed clusters of a survey. In this case, again, is for Lao. And we extracted the values for each mixed cluster. We did, again, the same for the original locations of the clusters and for the displaced one. Then we went to the mixed tables and we disaggregated the results by the minutes of reaching to the nearest healthcare facility. And if you check for the provider of the antenatal care, if you check in minutes, if you have the woman being within less than 10 minutes distance from the healthcare, it's more than 90% of the cases is the doctors are taking the antenatal care or doing the antenatal care. While if you check as the distance in minutes is increasing, we have less and less doctors. And if you go more than an hour distance from the healthcare, you have only 55% of doctors being the provider of the antenatal care. This is for the original coordinates of the clusters, while if you go to the displaced coordinates, this that is going to be available, the covariates for the displaced coordinates, this is not the same situation. In within the 10 first minutes, you have 80% being doctors as a provider, while for using the original coordinates, we had more than 91. So it means that we have 11% discrepancy by using the displaced coordinates of the clusters. And if you go to more than an hour, the changes are not too big. We had 54.6, and now we have 53.9, which is not a big differences. These are the two examples. Now I would like to move to something else. In MICS program, we have some initiatives as the one that it was MICS GIS, and then there are a few more like MICS Link, MICS Plus, MICS Tabulator, and so on. And now I will show some work that we have been doing for, if I can say, collaborating between different MICS initiatives. First is about the MICS Link, and later I have something for MICS Plus as well. The MICS Link example is about Fiji. In Fiji, we had the survey conducted in 2021, and we have been experimenting on the use of MICS GIS data and linking the data with open sources data coming from the country or from other data sets. This one that I show on the screen right now is an SEG indicator 911, and which is known as a Rural Access Index, and it measures the proportion of the rural population living within 2 kilometers from an all-seasonal road. Just to make it clear that all-seasonal road is not the same as all-weather road, but that is not for us to explain it at this point. So here is the Fiji country, and with the red lines, you see the roads around the country. And then with the blue polygons, you have the mixed sampled enumeration areas for the survey in 2021. And if we generate the buffers of 2 kilometers around the rural zones, around the roads, you very easily can calculate the proportion of the rural population within the buffer zones and the population that is left out. This is one exercise that we have been doing. And then there is another work that we are collaborating with the Ministry of Education in Fiji, with the Bureau of Statistics of Fiji, and with the UNICEF Development Education team. This is the work that we do in disaggregating the mixed education results by distance of children to school. In this survey, we had some questions which were particularly added for mixed link work. And these questions were related to the school identification details. So for every child or for every respondent in MICS Fiji, we have the school where they are going attending education. And we are relating the data, connecting the data to calculate the distance from the child location to the school. And here I put it a map with two clusters, this one here and the other one down here. And in this green triangle, we have our school locations. And we are calculating the air distance between the cluster location to the school location. And there's two more additional works, the calculations. This is the travel distance by using a car in minutes, and then we have the same calculation by just walking, following the nearest road. These are some calculations that we are working on, and we hope that we will be able to launch an additional publication for this data by disaggregating the mixed results by using the distance of children to their schools. Now, some use cases by using the MICS GIS data. As Bo said earlier, we have been working with MICS GIS only in the recent years, and we think that we have made a lot of progress. But for the data to come, for the use cases to come, we need more time because this involves the researchers to work on the use of MICS GIS data. As the very first pilot survey that conducted MICS GIS, it was LAO PDR, as I said earlier, LAO MICS 2017, meaning that this data, MICS GIS data for this survey, were the very first to be launched publicly. And some researchers got access to this data and they started working on doing different kind of analytical research, as this one that I'm showing from the aquatic research team on estimating the safely managed drinking water in Laos. Using the mixed data that we have published in 2017, you have the estimates only for using safely drinking water at the province level, because this is a sample certification of the survey. But by making available the mixed GIS data, researchers, by having the location, even that is the displaced location of the cluster, it is still very valuable on estimating, doing small area estimates for the, in this case, for the safely managed drinking water services. And they went to one lower level and did the estimates for all the districts in Laos. And as you can see, just to make it in lamest terms, you see here only two colors, and here you have variety of colors because we have estimates for all the districts in Laos. And they went to even a lower level, and they did this probability of using safely drinking water for all the settlements in Laos. So for each settlements, they have made estimates of the safely drinking water in Laos. Then another project is from University of Washington. It's about the small area estimates of child mortality in Laos PDR MICS 2017. Again, by using the mixed data, you have estimates only at the province level, but they were able, by using the mixed GIS data, they were able to go to a lower level and do small area estimates for all the districts in Laos. And in this way, they managed to find the results, to do the estimates for under 5 and neonatal mortality rate for different years using BB8 model. Then next is for Nigeria. And this, in the hyperlink that you see here, you can find the very first article published by using the MICS GIS data. which is coming from the Nigeria MICS 2021 survey. And the research team that was involved in this work, after getting access to the MICS GIS data, they were able to estimate the vaccination coverage for DTP and MCV and the composite coverage of these two vaccines, and do estimates for 1 by 1 kilometer pixels for the whole country in Nigeria, only by using the MICS GIS data from the 2021 MICS survey in Nigeria. They did something more by at Nigeria. The survey was certified at the state level, and they went to a lower level, to the local government area level, and did the estimates for all the LGAs in the country about the numbers of zero-dose children during the pandemic period in 2021 by using the MICS GIS data of Nigeria. So these are some use cases, and at this stage we have granted access to the MICS GIS data to hundreds of different teams or research works, and some of the topics that we have seen researchers are more interested in analyzing by using the MICS GIS data are listed down here, but I'm going to mention only a few of them, like child health and anthropometry, anonymisation, and early childhood development, and WASH, and some more being as the most as showing the most interest on analyzing MICS data by using MICS GIS data. Now, the very last topic, but not least important, is about the integration of a degree of urbanization into a MICS program. For you who don't know, let me start it like this. Different countries use different definition of what it means urban and what it means rural in their own countries. And there was a time when a European Commission thought about proposing a methodology of defining urban degrees by population-based definition, and defining the cities, towns, and rural areas only by using the population count on the specific areas. And since 2023, in July last year, with the support from European Commission, some UN agencies in partnership launched a 3-year program on integrating the degree of urbanization into their organizations. And one of the agencies is UNICEF, specifically MICS program on integrating degree of urbanization into MICS. This will allow MICS to do comparison between different countries by using the same definition of what it is city, what it is town, and what it is rural area. In MICS, we have been working in 3 different side projects, if I can call it like this, on implementing the DEGURBA into MICS. The first one is disaggregating the MICS results by using degree of urbanization. Then the next one is reviewing the methodology of displacement of cluster geocodes. And the last one is adding degree of urbanization as a variable to the geospatial covariates. This one I mentioned before. As one of the variables for the geospatial covariates, it will be degree of urbanization. This is not yet launched, but it will be soon, hopefully, launched. And for all the GIS, all the surveys with GIS data sets, you will have the degree of urbanization for the clusters in that specific survey. Let me show something more for the first 2. Here is Nigeria MICS Plus. This is the very first MICS survey to integrate degree of urbanization into the survey. As you see in the table below, which is coming from the first wave of Nigeria MICS Plus in 2023, the results has been disaggregated at the degree of urbanization categories for city, towns, and rural areas. Why is this? When we were conducting, as I said, MICS in Nigeria was conducted in 2021, and with MICS Plus we started in early 2023. And during this time period, some household has changed their location, their addresses. And by conducting the MICS Plus survey, we gathered the information about the new addresses where they live, the new location. And by having the addresses, we managed to geolocate the households. And in this way, we managed to find the degree of urbanization for all the households in MICS Plus. This is because the households that changed their addresses, we didn't know if that specific area is classified as urban or rural from the concept definition from the country. And by having the information of the locations of households, we managed to find the degree of urbanization. Therefore, we disaggregated the results by using the GURBA. For you who are interested in getting access to the data for Nigeria, please go to the link here. Then you have seen this slide before, the methodology of displacing the class of geocodes, which is at a random angle and at a random distance and remaining within the original administrative area. What we are thinking right now is that we are reviewing the methodology and we are thinking about, we are experimenting about adding a criteria of cluster remaining within the original degree of urbanization category. For example, if a cluster, it's located in a city, even after the displacement, the cluster will remain within city and not go into towns or to rural areas. And then if we have a cluster in a town, the GURBA category, that cluster must remain within the towns even after the displacement. And the same goes for the rural area clusters. This is all that we have prepared for today. Now, just what it is next for MICS GIS. As we started last year with the MICS 7, we are still working on the full integration of the MICS GIS into the global MICS program, and further development and maintenance of the documentation tools, protocols, methodology, and others. It will follow up. And we hope that in the future we will be able to have a more expanded library of the use cases. And when we reach the countries and when we discuss MICS, we'll have more use cases on the MICS GIS data use. And at this stage, we are working in depth work on integrating the degree of urbanization into MICS. Thank you very much. Here are some links where you can read more and find our tools, our MICS GIS tools. And if there is anything, you can contact me and Bo in the future. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Nazim, and thank you very much, Bo, for the introduction at the beginning. We can now go into the Q&A part of this webinar. The Q&A is now available. Please put your questions there. I already see 3 or 4 questions, I think, there. And I will ask, please, Bo and Nazim also to scan the questions coming in. We'll try to answer them in the order of which they came. The first question is from a colleague who has applied for access to GIS data from MICS. And the question is whether it is possible to apply for downloading multiple MICS GIS data rather than applying for each survey one by one.
Shall I take this one, Bo?
Yeah, please do, Nazim.
Okay. We have been working, so in MICS GIS, at this stage, we are doing everything via email, sharing the data, granting access to the data. And we hope that this is coming to an end very soon when we will launch the new website of MICS. And in the new website, you will have a separated web page when you can go to the MICS GIS and you can request the data sets of MICS. It will be a similar work. You have still to share the research scope, the plan of why do you need the data and what you are going to do with the data. But at least you will be able very easily to get access to the data, and not only to one data set, but to request multiple data sets at once. I know this has been a bit not difficult, but not necessarily time-consuming work for researchers, but it has been the same from our side too, because we had to share the data set manually for each surveys. But we hope that in the very near future, when we launch the new website, this will be automatically done and everyone can request multiple data sets at once.
Thanks, Nazim. The next question is about the displaced. I'll read the question. The displaced cluster centroids represent a variety of sizes and shapes of enumeration areas with different population sizes in the geospatial covariates part. How are you assigning a population total to a cluster? And the question is, it sounded like you are extracting the population estimate of solely the 1 kilometer grid square that the displaced cluster centroid falls on. Is that correct?
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. So in the geospatial covariates that we will launch, it will be data description for all the variables that you will have there. And you can, in the definition for each variable, you will see what kind of estimates you will have to the geospatial covariates. The example that I showed to you on the screen, it was for the estimated number of inhabitants living in 1 square kilometer. So that is correct. But there will be additional variables on not only the count for 1 square kilometer, but you will have it for the density, for example, of, again, for square kilometers and other topics. But everything, it will be explained at the data description, and everything will be clear to the geospatial data itself when we launch it. But yes, you are correct.
A quick question, Nazim and Bo. Are the clusters displaced to within true admin2 units like the DHS?
Okay, more or less you are correct, but my official answer would be like, if the sample certification is at admin1 level, then the displacement of cluster geocodes will be at one lower level than the sample certification. In this case, it means that the cluster will be displaced at admin2. But this is not the case for all the countries, because in some surveys we have the sample certification, we have groups of admin1s, let's say regions. And then that sample, if the sample certification is groups of admin1s, it means that the displacement of clusters will be at one lower level, which is admin1. But I can say, like, let's say 80% of the cases, the displacement is done at admin2, but every time is done at one lower level than the sample certification. At least this is for the surveys that are coming from the last few years and the surveys that will come MICS7 and so on. Because if we go back in the time, it's very hard sometimes to do the displacement at one lower level, but this is only for the very past surveys. For the recent surveys and upcoming surveys, the displacement is done at one lower level than the sample certification.
Maybe
Another
I can
question.
add that.
Yeah, please go ahead,
Paul. So for a lot of this, we have a standard, and the standard is basically following that of DHS. We took that decision deliberately because of our capacity And because of the user demand, we felt quite certain that the researchers that immediately would want to get to work on additional countries and additional surveys already covered in countries already covered by DHS would want to see basically an exact replica of the methodology. But as some of you may know, I mean, this methodology of displacement is developing and will continue to develop over the years, and we are with our increased capacity have begun experimenting with not to reinvent the wheel or to come up with something that is entirely different, but for us to gain an experience on what to do, especially in the situation where the devil is in the detail. For instance, we have an increasing number of surveys in these small islands of the Pacific. Displacement there go through, I would say, a different level of review, because you cannot displace outside of an island, right? It goes for other places. You will have clusters that are inside national parks. You cannot displace with the methodology that we are using, because it is the only cluster within the territory of the national park. There are lots of these little peculiar cases, and they are there in every country, some countries more than others, but it's a continuous work for us. For now, for the past couple of years, our main, maybe exclusive focus has been on let's get the data out and gain experience with this, and also hire some expertise to continue to develop this and participate in the global conversation on how to do this best, and looking to the future. For instance, displacing by the number of population within grid cells, for example. So I just wanted to clarify that we have a standard, but it's quite often that the standard needs a little bit of a tweak. One of the experiences that we have had in investigating just a simple thing such as boundaries and availability of shapefiles that we can confidently confirm with national governments is tricky, because there are a large amount of shapefiles available globally. Some countries have perfect shapefiles of their country to the detail of meters that are continuously updated. That is not the case for all countries. There are border disputes. There are things that you cannot touch because of political sensitivities, rightfully so. So there are lots of little details that we have preferred for now to mostly stay away from, because we are not in the business of solving that kind of work globally. So for now, focus is on getting as much data out as possible and then take it from there. Anyway, just an elaboration.
Thank you both. It seems that we're getting many questions about displacement, so I will deliberately change the subject a little bit and come back to displacement again. One quick question is, do you have an idea of when this geospatial covariates will be made available?
Yeah, last we had another webinar, and okay, the geospatial covariates, we hope that very soon this will be launched. And one thing is for sure, that before having the new website, we will not launch anything. And because the geospatial covariates will need to have a place where we can put the data sets. And this is an excuse for us. And very soon, I think we have made very good progress on preparing and finalizing the geospatial covariates standard data sets for the whole globe. So that meaning we will be very easily to extract for each different surveys. We hope soon, but we cannot promise a date.
Okay, let's go back to displacement again. Basically, the next question is about the displacement is good for protecting the confidentiality of the data, of the households in question. But in some cases, it will depend on the similarity of the neighboring cluster or village, let's say, that you would have displaced the original cluster. There might be very dissimilar characteristics of the displaced location. How do you deal with this discrepancy?
I was kind of hoping that Nazim would say something because I don't have a good answer to this. My answer is that we don't deal with it in the sense that you are absolutely correct. Researchers, generally speaking, have included a basically the displacement buffer that we work with, right? In the amount of displacement that is done is integrated into their modeling so that it takes it into account. But obviously, it cannot account for everything, and you will find that things have changed either little or a lot by the displacement. Nazim was earlier giving the example of climate and precipitation, etc. Do not change within the maximum of 10 kilometers that we do. But of course, there are places on the planet where it does, right? You have people who live next to a mountain range and those who live up the hill where the climate and precipitation is different. So there are certainly quite many differences. Unfortunately, my answer remains that it's not something that we can deal with. Our business presently, anyway, is to release the data in the format that is, globally accepted. So that is a topic for the future.
I think the general approach behind this, if I may say so, is to err on the side of the households, to keep the confidentiality, which is more important than anything else to us, of course. Have you tested any method or done any sensitivity analysis to take into account the cluster displacement when extracting values from the geospatial covariates? For example, at extracting by using buffers around each cluster point, which I am aware the colleague says has been used before. Would this be something that you recommend to do when doing the extraction?
I think Nazim can speak to some of the experiments that we have been doing and some of the modifications to our method that we are going through presently. Over to you, Nazim.
Yeah, so I said it's for the methodology of displacement and for the geospatial covariates, we are following the methods used from the DHS program. So not 100% identical, but similar to them. And we are following the same approach as they do for the geospatial covariates as well. And in the past, they have been releasing the geospatial covariates. I'm sorry that I'm talking on behalf of someone else, but these are publicly available data description. And they have been calculating geospatial covariates using buffer zones. And now they switched or updated their methodology on the calculation of the geospatial covariates. And we are trying to follow them. But in the same time, we are very, very young on this, but we are still having testing the work on the geospatial covariates using the buffer zones and extracting the geospatial covariates only at a point, or even we have been doing some interpolation of the data, putting all the covariates in one resolution, which is 5 kilometers at the equator. And we extract the value at that 5 by 5 kilometer cell. So we have been testing how it is affecting the results and how close are we to the by using the original coordinates or the displaced one. But at this stage, we have not been able to publish yet anything because we have not yet published the geospatial covariates at all. So we are testing this internally. The buffer zones, using the point of the cluster, and using the 5 by 5 kilometer resolution. So we are working in these three aspects, and we hope that we can come up with more analytical explanation of this work in the future. But as I said, we have not launched yet the geospatial covariates, so I think we still have time for this.
A covariate related question. Sometimes when we think about access to school, for instance, which may not be affected by nearness to school, but due to other geographical factors, such as the village may be in the middle of the river, and to cross to the other side will require a lot of resources and time than the actual distance suggests. How do we treat similar situations, these kinds of situations?
I mean, it's a really good question. One that you saw Nazim's table, looking at the distance to school and the Fiji one on travel time to school. It's really tricky, which also sort of leads me to my excuse, meaning that from the MICS side, from our perspective now, as it goes with the traditional MICS data, I mean the survey data, is that the main objective is to release the data and make it publicly available, and obviously to try and limit any misuse or wrongful interpretations of the results. But the problem is that we simply can't be everywhere, and we can't have enough expertise to deal with these situations in research. I don't have a good answer for you, because I don't even have an answer to show for the example that we show. We look at other things, obviously, but we looked, for instance, at distance to primary school, to secondary school, even to tertiary education, and mainly reviewing how the data, how the results is acting against the different disaggregate boundaries that you can set. So whenever we work with the displaced data, obviously we will have to limit the detail in the disaggregates, and likely also take into account even further data sets, for instance, relating to access constraints to schools in this particular example. But it is one of the constraints of working with displaced data. But there's really, at this stage, for us and in general for others, there's really not much we can do in terms of access to original data. That is just too much of an ethical boundary to cross for us and for others. We are considering, as you saw, I think in one of the slides, that it is possible for those who have access to the original data, meaning here within exclusively the MICS team and the typically the national statistics offices, to analyze the data using the original locations and aggregating results. So, for instance, for this particular aspect, the slide that you saw on access to education or distance to school has been based in a part of it on the original location, but that data is not available to the public, right? It's fine that you see the results as long as you don't have access and can basically cross-tabulate it with the other parts of the data. So we will be working on preparing different things based on the original data with the concurrence of the owners of the data, obviously. Yeah, that's it. I think that's the best I can say.
Thanks, both. Maybe I can go to something that you said at the beginning, Bo, where you said that the MICS program has been encouraging countries to collect the geocodes during MICS surveys from 2005. And at the time, how has the business model changed since then? We now know that many countries already have geocoded enumeration areas. So and a proactive collection of GIS coordinates during the survey implementation is no longer necessary in some cases. So I was wondering, how has the business model changed since then? Was it the same back in 2005, or was a different method used to make these kinds of data available? And now, based on the number of surveys that we have worked on, I think Nazim showed a list of those countries. Were the geocodes collected during implementation of the survey, or were they all already made available during the sample design stage?
Well, yes, the business model has changed, right? We have gone from having to manually collect cluster sensor points using the classic Garmin device, which is still in use in a number of surveys, to if we look back and say that was 2005, and then we move up to say 2015, predominantly past the 2010 census round for lots of countries. In that period alone, a large proportion of the world's countries put in place either simple or very high quality GIS data collection. You had lots of countries even putting shapefiles to enumeration areas, which is the most luxurious product that we have to deal with in some countries. It allows us to really see how data behaves when we look at the entire boundary of a cluster, and even as since Andy is here and asking questions from World Pop, it allows us to really examine the population, right, with overlaying population grids and how they are distributed in especially the really large clusters. So that's a thing of beauty. And now we are coming on the other side of the 2020 round of censuses, and the data is even better than before. We obviously still have many countries in our world of surveys with MICS, where we have very outdated censuses. Lots of countries are still operating with those from the time of the GPS unit, and we do employ that in quite a number of surveys, especially countries that in one way or another have been involved in economic turmoil or emergency situations, as would be expected. But the situation has really improved. We have also now, in a number of surveys made, I mean, we have available now from the MICS team a household mapping and listing application that runs on Android. As some of you may know, Android tablets typically come with GPS chips, which allows us to, instead of collecting data, to validate data and even collect data, which is done. It is a bit sensitive. It is still I would say, an area of some experimentation, but our first results are generally quite good using our data collection application to collect the data or validate the data, so to speak. There are some countries where the use of an additional relatively costly unit is recommended for a number of reasons, but it is on the rare occasion. But also in the countries where the data typically is the most demanded and most needed, countries that have sort of been left behind the development of the rest of the world to some extent. But it has changed. It is a thing of beauty. And a number of the surveys that we have worked on, in that 13 that we have released so far, and the ones we are working on in the pipeline, it is the amount of cleaning and reviews that are necessary from our side is very, very limited. The data is just perfect. We've had a couple of those cases recently in the pipeline, and we're talking, instead of spending weeks on a project, even months on a project, it is a matter of 10 minutes, basically. It's not exactly 10 minutes, but it's very close. So it's a thing of beauty, and it's free, which is fantastic.
Great. Thank you. A degree of urbanization related question, I think. In the future, is it correct that in the future the mixed data sets online for downloading will have the urban-rural variable in 3 categories instead of 2? And if that's the case, have you actually done any cross-tabulation between those 2?
If I can say a very short comment.
I need to say something first, because this has to be completely clear on this call. The DU, the degree of urbanization, is not there to replace the urban rule, which is an integral part of the national sampling frame and how things have been consistently done with national statistical offices. This is a complementary measure that is globally standardized, which makes it beautiful, but may not be the way that a country wishes to operate. So it is an additional and simple measure to include. There are many countries that are either working on or already have integrated degrees of urbanization into their sampling frame, which is good, because that would then rely on, what should I say, real census data rather than taking from the grids. I mean, it's not that the grids are not good, but you would want, especially us old traditionalists, we would like to anchor ourselves in census data and maybe triangulate towards grids. So that is really helpful when that is available. But just to make it completely clear, for the most part, sample design and reporting of results will still be on urban rural or whatever classification is in use in the country. Degree of urbanization is an additional piece.
And maybe can you say something about the actual downloading experience? Is it going to be mixed data sets themselves, which are going to be furnished with degree of urbanization, or are we going to keep these separate? The mixed data sets will have the original urban-rural disaggregation of the survey, and then the degree of urbanization will come in a different data set. Can you say something about the downloading experience that users should expect?
Well, it's for those on the call who have requested GIS datasets, this is going to be, I think Nazim already mentioned, it's going to be a completely different, simpler exercise. We are still retaining some control over downloads. Users will still have to agree to the conditions of use. They will still have to, for instance, not be sharing the data, and there's a clause in there on that. The data will obviously only be shared with the people who do a sign up and commit to the conditions of use. But it would be possible to download multiple data sets, just as it has been the case and will continue to be the case on the actual survey data. It will still be kept separate because of the additional control. We are releasing data that is much more sensitive, and we, unlike the basically open access survey data sets, we need to keep a bit more control on this data as requested by the different national the statistical offices that we are working on with this. They're requesting this for very good reasons. There will still be a few countries that would not want this in the public domain, but even with those countries, we are working with our protocols, with our anonymization processes, to make the data available for themselves, and they have exclusive control on sharing of this data. So that will be the experience. The test of the website is currently ongoing, and I'm quite pleased with it. I hope users will be too. Certainly users that will be asking for 15 GIS datasets will be very happy that they don't have to fill out 15 forms, but can do it more or less in one go.
Thank you, Bo. I guess this is probably the last question because we haven't been receiving new questions for the last few minutes. So I will read this last question as it came. If you choose the number of population to designate an urban or rural city or urban rural city, however, there is in certain regions an exodus from the city to rural regions, example of Paris to other rural regions. So how will you react?
So if we, the question can be about a couple of different things. It can be relating to the sample, and it can be relating to the degree of urbanization. If we look at it from the aspect which I think it is about on the degree of urbanization, the exodus, meaning the migration from urban to rural, will be captured in the population grids as they get continuously updated based by the techniques that only those grid people can explain thoroughly. So the classification is basically determined by the number of people who live within grids, right? There's a few other aspects to it, but that's more or less it. So if you have, let's say, a large proportion of people who have moved from Paris to village life, villages will grow and will be captured and eventually turn into towns. The degree of urbanization is further disaggregated. It is not just the 3 categories that we are currently working on, but there is a number of different categories that split the rural category into sparsely populated and more populated areas. So that might be something to look at for the future, but we're taking it one step at a time. Did I explain that correctly, Nazim? You are the expert on this.
Yeah, I mean, more or less you answered. And if we understand correctly, if this question is about the degree of urbanization, this is not going to be one-time classification. In this case, for Paris, for example, it's going to be updated. And if we conduct surveys within a range of 5 years in the same country, if we conduct a survey at 2020 and then in 2025, the degree of urbanization, it will not be the same. We will use the updated data and not the one that were in the 2020, meaning that if we had exode or migration, it will be captured. And for Paris, I don't think it would matter because even after the migration, there's still enough number of population categorizing at the same the Gurba category. But for other countries, we still will use the updated data sets. So this will be covered there.
Great, thanks. I think we managed to address all of the questions that came in, and very good questions.
Attila, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Nazim.
Yeah, it was just a half question not answered. It was about the cross-evaluation between urban-rural and the traditional urban and rural and degree of urbanization.
Yeah,
we have been working on that one too. We have some tables and we are working internally for that. For degree of urbanization, we went publicly only for Nigeria Mix Plus. So we are not yet integrating. We have not yet integrated fully in Mix 7. So that's why we are working internally. But of course, we have done cross-tabulation for urban-rural traditional ones and the degree of urbanization. We are mainly focused in the first level of degree of urbanization for the 3 categories that I showed, city, town, and rural areas. But the second level as well with 7 categories, as opposed to just splitting this 3 into 7. We have been comparing the results at that level too. But we are more, of course, concentrated to the first level with 3 categories, and we are working on that. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry,
there will be discrepancies, of course, because that's the whole point of the degree of urbanization.
Yeah.
Because the urban and rural designations are administrative designations in many cases, in most countries, and they are not based on cross-country comparable criteria. What the degree of urbanization tries to do is to come up with an internationally comparable definition of what rural means and what town means and what city means, etc. All these categories in the degree of urbanization. So we should only expect that there's going to be discrepancies, but how much those discrepancies are going to be, we are looking into each of those, and we will continue to do so, as will others. Of course, we're going to be doing this in the context of MICS, but I'm sure other agencies are going to be looking into this. So we have now addressed all the questions, I think, and no more questions are coming in. So thank you very much to our participants for these great questions. Many of them were about displacement. That's interesting, and also on degree of urbanization. Really good. So thank you very much, and thank you to Bo and Nazim for this great presentation. This is a new initiative, relatively new initiative of the MICS program, although it has been there in our hearts from the beginning, from MICS 3 onwards, but it is only now in the last 2-3 years that we have been able to create the capacity and the time and the resources to do this work systematically. And we've been doing it retrospectively and progressively. So you saw some of the examples, which are from surveys in 2017, which means that we are trying to cover some surveys which have happened in the recent past, but progressively we are now in full speed to support all the countries which will be coming in as part of MICS 7 to furnish them with geocodes and support our country colleagues to make this data available. So thank you very much. And at this point, I hand over to my colleague Archana to close the session and show us what is going to happen in the next 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Attila. I'd also like to extend my thank yous to both Bo and Nazim for the excellent presentation, and of course all the participants for your great questions and comments. The next webinar will take place in 2 weeks, April 3rd, and the topic is using MICS and DHS to estimate mortality among children, adolescents, and young people aged 5 to 24 years. So I hope you'll be able to join us for that. Kindly note that we'll be switching over and using the Zoom platform for the remaining sessions, so including the one in 2 weeks. Last reminder that all recordings are available on the MICS YouTube channel, as well as the internal UNICEF SharePoint sites. So please give us a few hours to get that uploaded, and then you can see it there as well. So with that, I'd like to thank you again and wish you a good rest of the day or the evening. Thank you all. Bye, everyone.